Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Is the GSMC Baseball Podcast here on the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Collin Manley, bringing you another episode. We got a lot of baseball news to talk about. We have some stuff that we need to be getting you updated on when it comes to news around the league. But we also have to take the time to talk about a little bit of the offseason rumor mill. This is the time where, man, information is just going to be coming left, right, up, down, all over the place. And we need to be, I would say aware of a lot of the rumors and news, trying to make sense of most of it. There's always going to be some stuff that comes out that's not truthful and some stuff that's a little bit of a smokescreen. But we talked about where a lot of players where we think they're going to end up going, what could be their options. So getting these updates only helps us narrow things down a little bit. So that's going to be fun to talk about. And while it seems absurd, absolutely absurd, I do want to take a little bit of time and talk about the 2021 season. In particular, I want to talk about some rookies that we're going to have in that season, as well as who could be some potential MLB award winners. But we'll break into that a little bit more when we get to that point. The first thing we need to dive into is some news and noise around the league, get you caught up on all 30 teams, and some breaking news across the MLB. And I don't think there is any place else that we would have to start today other than with the Miami Marlins making a big move. They have decided that they are hiring Kim Ng as their new general manager, making her Major League Baseball's first female general manager. Team announced on Friday. And let's not just stop there at the first female general manager in baseball, but in pro sports. This is a big, monumental move, and there's probably a lot of baseball fans that see the name, maybe even have seen pictures of her, and just they have no idea who she is. And I have to say, she has quite an impressive resume and seems very deserving to get this position, get this chance in baseball. Just kind of going around it. Ng is 51 years old, and most recently, she has served as the MLB's Senior Vice President of Baseball Operations, and that's been for the past 9 years. So she's been around the game, mainly around the MLB, for quite some time, where she was the highest-ranked Asian American female baseball executive. She's also served as an assistant general manager for the New York Yankees and the Los Angeles Dodgers. So two big-time organizations that she's been a part of, and that New York Yankees ones comes to be, interesting in the sense of, well, the Marlins, big time part of their ownership is Derek Jeter. So there's a connection most likely there. She was working with those teams, the Yankees and the Dodgers, that made the playoffs 8 times and won 3 World Series titles. So she has been around a great deal of success. Ng had broken to baseball as an intern, spent time in the Chicago White Sox front office. She's going to end up being the highest-ranking women in baseball operations among the league's 30 teams. And in the 4 major North America men's sports, being that first general manager for a female. And that's just awesome to see. It's been very progressive in baseball as of recently, and also other sports. We've been starting to see a lot more women joining coaching staffs, and we had a couple joining baseball last year. So this is just another step forward. And like I said, this shouldn't be a surprise or a shock move in any way, shape, or form, because just looking at what she has done in her career, what she has been around, involvement with teams, nothing but great things to be said about her. So you have to say congratulations, and it's been really cool to see a lot of the sports world just applauding this move. And they're not applauding it just because she's a woman. She's a woman. They're applauding it because it was a smart, great decision, and she gets to land that GM job. And it might be almost a little overdue, I would bet some would say, because of her impressive track record. So congratulations to her. Big news for the Marlins, and we'll see. I mean, there's a lot of moves that can be made there. The Marlins are an interesting team with some young prospects and some young players in the minor league system coming up. So she'll get an opportunity to make an impression right away and see what she can do. And maybe this free agency will see a thing or two happen. Very exciting news in baseball. Moving on, we have to talk about some awards that have been dished out since our last podcast. And Freddie Freeman is going to be our man who walks away with the National League MVP award. Very impressive season. He received 28 of the 30 first place votes in the balloting for this. And Mookie Betts was the one to get the other two first place votes. And then third place was Manny Machado. It really seemed like he was the easy decision between the three finalists. It's funny how this thing, even just 60 games, how much it fluctuated. For a lot of the season, we thought it was going to be Fernando Tatis who was going to walk away with this award. But Freddie Freeman really just had a high batting average, a lot of home runs, RBIs, was just all around an impressive bat in every aspect of the game. And there's not much else to be said on this. He was just impressive. He was great. One of his best seasons in baseball, even if it's that shortened season, who really cares? Falling behind Machado, we had Tatis in fourth place, Juan Soto, afterwards Marcell Ozuna, Trey Turner, Mike Yastrzemski, Corey Seager, and Trevor Bauer getting some votes. Was also an interesting situation and a misclick of some votes in the National League that were received, as a reporter from St. Louis had accidentally sent a vote to a Cubs reliever, Ryan Tepera, and there was a little bit of outrage and outcry when the results were released. And I know that at least from a few people that I follow on social media thought that it was a mistake. This was a joke, something's not right, as the Chicago Cubs reliever was 0-1 with a 3.92 ERA in the season. It wasn't a lot to him, but it was funny to see nonetheless. And as we tracked it down, it sounded like a reporter in St. Louis had a misclick on his ballot. He wanted Trey Turner, accidentally ended up voting for Mr. Ryan Tepera. So that was a funny thing to see. Moving on to the American League, another guy that we thought was going to win, AL MVP, Jose Abreu. Now, this one was a little bit tighter, a little more contested, but still pretty convincing win. 33-year-old received 21 of the 30 first place votes and 374 points in voting altogether. Second place was Jose Ramirez, who had 303 total points and 8 of the first place votes, and the other first place vote going to DJ LeMahieu, who finished in third place. I actually was a little bit surprised that we didn't see a little more love for Shane Bieber overall, but he finished fourth in the AL MVP voting, and Mike Trout finishing fifth. He's still lingering around, staying in that MVP consideration, and then followed by Nelson Cruz, Tim Anderson, Brandon Lau, Luke Voigt, and Anthony Rendon. A lot of great, impressive names. I like to see how the Angels have two guys on there for the MVP, but yet their season was a little interesting, but just something to point out. Congratulations to Jose Abreu. Was just strong this year. Led the majors with 60 RBIs, 148 total bases. Topped the AL with 76 hits and a .617 slugging percentage. Even played in all 60 games, which is something that is incredibly impressive considering the fact of how hard it was to have people be healthy all year. So congratulations to Jose Abreu. Moving over to the pitching side of things. Well, when it comes to the American League Cy Young, Shane Bieber, congratulations being our winner there. A unanimous victor. And I don't think this is surprising as he was our Triple Crown pitcher winner in the American League. Strikeouts, wins, ERA, he was just phenomenal. So congratulations to Shane Bieber. I don't think that one was necessarily going to be all that close, but was fun and all to see how all the voting broke down. Hyun-Jin Ryu was another guy up there. Kenta Maeda was another guy up there. Impressive seasons. You can't knock any of these guys It's just Bieber was that stinking good that there wasn't much more you can say about it. I, first unanimous choice in the American League since 2011. 41.1% strikeout rate. His lowest ERA at that 1.63, lowest qualified ERA, I should say, at 1.63 since 1969, tying for the lowest opponent batting average at 167. Just a great season for him, great season. Moving on to the National League side, Trevor Bauer became the first Reds pitcher to win the award after leading the National League in ERA, 1.73, WHIP at 0.79, opponent's batting average at 159, and shutouts. He ranks second in strikeouts at 100 and strikeouts per 9 innings at 12.3. Yu Darvish was in consideration there. Jacob deGrom was up there for another potential Cy Young. Surprise, surprise. We had some just great pitching performances, and I really leave a lot of this season being a little bit bummed out in the sense that, well, we didn't get to see him over a full slate of a season, but even with just 60 games, pretty impressive numbers, pretty great stuff. We had talked about in our last podcast we recorded, and that was for Wednesday, about Manager of the Year awards. Kevin Cash was the American League Manager of the Year, leading the Rays to their first AL East title since 2010. They had 13 players in the IL on September 1st, 59 different batting orders in 60 games. So you can't tell me that he didn't have his hand in things a little bit there. Impressive for him. We thought that one was going to be the clear-cut winner. The only one that we could say surprise, but at the same time, like we talked about, we didn't know 100% which way the National League Manager of the Year was going to go. I thought it was going to be more Jay Stingler for the Padres. It ended up being Don Mattingly, just the fifth to win Manager of the Year and MVP, Don Mattingly, guiding the Marlins to their first postseason appearance in 17 years. And I mean, they lost 100 games last year. So the turnaround is justified to give him the award. Also, with everything going on with COVID and the pandemic and how much they had to mess with their roster, it was funny. Mattingly even said there were some guys that showed up, he didn't know who they were. And he had to try and make it work the best he could. So congratulations to those two. Just getting you caught up on all of those awards. And award season's over. So it is time for us to truly, truly move on to the offseason and start talking about where some players are for sure going to be going. And now we don't have anything locked in. We don't have any agreed major contracts. We could talk about Marcus Stroman, who accepted a qualifying offer with the Mets. That was a little bit of a surprise move, but $18.9 million was probably going to be a hard number to beat, at least just for this season. Maybe if Stroman believed that he was going to lock up a few more years, he could have gone that route, but it could be something to say about the Mets organization as well. Maybe Steve Cohen being a convincing person that gets him to stay. But outside of Stroman, we have some other rumor mill things we need to be talking about. So we're going to take a quick break here on the podcast, and when we come back, we got some names, we got some news. We're going to keep you updated on everything that we are seeing coming out as reports so far in the MLB offseason here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
If there's anything that I've learned in looking at and covering sports for such a long time, it's that you got to be able to sift through some stuff that is nonsense, some stuff that can be true, and you got to be careful with where you're getting your information from. With that being said, we're starting to get a heavy dose of information coming out about a lot of players that are free agents, trade targets, all of that, and where some potential destinations can be. Now, I want to say this up front. This is all rumors. We don't know for sure where any of this stuff is going to go, and there's going to be a noise around a lot of these players because this 2020 offseason is going to be very interesting because we don't know necessarily what the dollars are going to be, what the teams are going to be spending. If I could say confidently, I believe more in these big market teams than these small market ones. I really do, just because of their TV deals and their generated money. They just seem like they have a lot more going for them in the sense where they have security financially. There's going to be some teams that are a little scared to spend. I know just from my area of where I live up in the Midwest, the Brewers are a team that have talked about, their money. They're going to have to be careful this upcoming year. They don't know if they're going to spend nearly as much as they did last year. So they're going to be trying to make some more team friendly deals. And that's something that we could be seeing across the league for quite a few teams and towns. So it's going to be interesting to watch. I'm curious at what the first contracts are truly going to look like. And it's anyone's guess. We try to make predictions off of past markets, but this year is not like past markets. It's going to be very different. So we have to take everything with a real grain of salt. But with that all said, we do have a few players that some new off-season rumor mill information has started to come out. And on November 13th, we were starting to get some noise around AL MVP finalist DJ LeMahieu and the fact that there is going to be some other teams that have some interest in him. Now, to be honest, many still believe the desired destination, or at least the place that he is most likely to end up, is going to be with the New York Yankees. It's going to be hard to outbid them. He's not accepting their qualifying offer of $18.9 million. He thinks he's going to get more for that. But there are 4 other teams that have been thinking there's potential he could be going here. Now, the first team being the Toronto Blue Jays. Now, the Blue Jays, we've mentioned before, they could be big spenders in this offseason. There's potential there. And they signed free agent left-hander Robbie Ray to a 1-year, $8 million deal. There is some belief that Toronto could look at LeMahieu to play first base. And that would move Vlad Guerrero Jr. to mainly be a designator hitter. But LeMahieu also has the flexibility to play second, play third, and just give their team a lot of options when it comes to the DH. So they're a team that a lot of people are considering moving forward. I know we talked about Francisco Lindor as a potential Toronto Blue Jay target just because of all the young contracts they have right now. They're not locked into a great amount of money. They could make a contract offer here and try to put together some new guys with their talented youth and make a real run in the American League East because they believe they're better than that 8th seed that they got this year. They really think they have something brewing there for Toronto. Another team that's getting interesting, and stop me if you've heard this one before, but the Mets ownership is going to be spending coming this offseason. And LeMahieu at second base, moving Robinson Cano potentially to a DH if the National League keeps it, or LeMahieu could play a third base. So the signing of LeMahieu is not going to stop anything for the Mets. They aren't going to wait and see if a DH is going to happen. They know they have 2 options. Cano can play DH, LeMahieu can play third. We can figure this out and make it work. And it seems like early indications again is they want to be spending the New York Mets. Steve Cohen is making this very, very, very clear. He wants to change things up. He even threw down I was surprised with this quote, but he wants to be in World Series contention pretty quick. He said 3 to 5 seasons. If they're not there, then he's doing something wrong. And it's hard to turn a baseball team that quick. It can be if you don't have the farm system. So don't be surprised if they become spenders because of that. And another one with some new general managers in town, the Angels could be looking as they have been brought up as a team. Now, they need to focus on pitching, and that's something that everyone knows. They have lacked there for years. But there is some belief that the addition of LeMahieu to a lineup that already has Trout and Rendon to be a very dangerous and very interesting thing. Now, if they have the money and the capabilities to do that, yeah, sure. Okay, go for it. But they still, as a team, have to think about we cannot sacrifice everything and still not get some pitching to embrace our team to help move us forward. So that's something to be watching as well. And then a fourth team that people have been kind of signaling towards are the Washington Nationals looking to secure another player to go with Juan Soto. Now, we thought JT Realmuto could potentially be going there because Soto had been talking about how he'd love for it to be there. But LeMahieu is also another option in Washington. They're a team that's coming back from a lot of injuries. They have some young talent, Soto, Trey Turner. They're going to hope to get their pitching strength back. Scherzer, Strasburg, have that all rolling again. And they lost some guys, opened up some money going into this offseason. So the Nationals could potentially try to buy on one of these free agents as well. Something to be watching. So those are just the four teams that we have been hearing a little bit more teams to watch if the Yankees are not going to retain him. So LeMahieu is the prize. He's really starting to seem like more and more of the prize, and how so many teams could make sense for him and make him fit. So don't be surprised if there's 5 other teams that are talked about before he actually signs. He could fit anywhere. He's an infielder that can go in any spots, especially when the third base market is not that great in free agency right now. Moving on to an interesting name that I didn't expect to hear so much noise about. Yadier Molina has been drawing some interest from teams outside of the Cardinals. So now let's make sure that we say this first. A return with St. Louis would probably be the most ideal. I don't know if Yadier Molina just wants to leave the Cardinals. He's been there. He's been a staple. He's a fan favorite. It's going to be hard for him to get out of that situation. But we are seeing some interest come from the Mets and the Yankees and quote unquote 3 to 4 other teams. So there is some interest. And the Mets and the Yankees make sense. We talked about the Mets being in on Realmuto because they declined the option of Wilson Ramos, so they have a catcher spot that needs to be filled. The Yankees are not loving what they've gotten from Gary Sanchez in the past years. They want more consistent offensive production and obviously some sort of upgrade defensively. And Yadier Molina offers someone who, while he's not the same guy he's been in the past, he was all right offensively last year. That shortened season, I think, played to a strength for him. Allowed him to have a better season. But defensively, he's still Yadi. He is still one of the better guys behind the plate. And it doesn't look like that's going away. It really makes sense for both of these teams and needs. And it changes your thoughts a little bit on Realmuto when I hear that this interest is coming. I wonder if this pushes him back towards the Phillies being a very, very likely option. It's something that you have to think about a little bit. I didn't expect this type of interest to be coming from all over the place. It just feels like it feels like Molina would be staying in St. Louis, but I guess I shouldn't make that call just yet. And this kind of ties together to something else that the Yankees have been open to trading Gary Sanchez. They've been thinking about that, looking at offers for him this offseason. The club has been in contact with Molina's agent, so this is perhaps signaling that there is a change coming behind the plate. If it's not Realmuto or Molina, I mean, I don't know what the Yanks are going to do, but it looks like Gary Sanchez, his days in New York could be dwindling down. Another name, the Padres and Mike Clevenger have an extension in the works. And this is a very interesting move on both sides, I have to say, when I look at this. So now, it has the early implications of being a 2-year deal. And that's according to some league sources coming from Robert Murray. And the reason it's so interesting is because this is going to buy out the final 2 years of arbitration for Clevenger. So that team control, the battle of arbitration, that's gone. 2-year extension, he's there for the next 2 years. But he then becomes a free agent in 2022. Still. And I'm just surprised. Now, this clears up any contract issues with Clevenger. It shows that the Padres are all in. and it makes salary clear. But Clevenger has, been injury prone. He's had some issues staying on the field, and that even happened here in San Diego. Now, you got to give him credit, too, as he tried to come back early from an injury to be a part of the postseason. But he has been struggling with injuries. I thought the team might take a little bit of the team control just with some uncertainty on his health, but it looks like they're trying to lock him in and just show Clevenger they're in for the real deal. I don't know. I don't really knock the move either way. I don't think it's going to hurt either side. I mean, Clevenger has had a 2.96 ERA since the beginning of 2017, so he's been really good. When healthy, he's been really good. And if he comes back healthy for the Padres, he's going to be a big addition to a team that has a great offense, has a young and fun starting rotation. I mean, there's going to be some young guys in there. They already have some pitchers up. Lamet was a great guy for them. They have some other prospects that could be coming up as starters. So it makes sense. It makes sense for the team just trying to lock everything in. So we'll see if that gets done by the time this is released. Maybe by the next podcast, we'll have this information for sure. The last one on the rumor mill that's very interesting to me is the Marcell Ozuna market may be crazy hot. Now, from what we know about Ozuna, he had an interesting offseason last year where he had to settle on the 1-year prove-it deal with the Braves. Now, he got paid in that 1-year prove-it deal, but he is drawing a lot more interest. And it's been reported by MLB Network insider John Heyman of upwards as many as 10 teams. And we have to bring that up because if you know Ozuna's game, offensively he's great, but defensively he is a problem. He is not good for you there. So, upwards to 10 teams, it's not likely that that's 10 just American League teams. There's most likely National League teams in on this too, because we don't know if that designated hitter spot's going to be here in 2021. But I don't feel like a lot of teams are too nervous about that. They just want his offense in the lineup. And maybe there's some insider information known that maybe the DH idea is going to flip. The story behind that really is we have some negotiating that needs to be done. The players and the union has to decide what we're going to give up to get the DH. It seems like the players want the DH, but a lot of the owners in the MLB want something else in return. So that negotiation is going to be carried on. But that makes it interesting with Ozuna. There seems to be a great deal of interest. So we'll see if that market gets a little more clear because teams weren't necessarily announced. We imagine the Braves got to be in there hoping for him to return. There's some other teams that potentially need offensive help. I talked about it before. The Cardinals are interesting. There's a lot of people that believe that the White Sox, the Red Sox, the Rangers, and the Astros could all be involved. So there's other teams on top of that. So there's a lot of different ways that Ozuna could go. And it seems like his stock is kind of rising a little bit at the moment. So it's not going to be another prove-it deal for him. It's going to be something a little bit better than his 1-year, $18 million deal that he had with the Braves. So after you hit 18 home runs, 56 RBIs, go along with 338 average, you get some people's attentions, and it looks like Ozuna is doing just that. So that's our quick look at the rumor mill. This is some of the updated information that has been coming our way. And it's going to keep coming our way. It's not going to stop. We're going to continue to get rumors, noise from a bunch of teams, a bunch of scouts, a bunch of reporters. So we're going to try to keep you updated with that the best we can until we start getting some names on these contracts, ink to the paper. So we're going to take another quick break. And when we come back, I want to talk about some rookies for the 2021 season. And I got my reasons why. We're going to take that break. We'll be right back on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
One of my favorite things that we saw come from the 2020 season definitely has to be the mixture of young guys that got to come up and play this year. Now, the Rookie of the Year was fun to talk about just because we had all of these guys. We had all these potential candidates, and it ultimately went to what I thought were probably the two best choices. But we have some guys that we're going to have next year playing because they were already up last year, or they got a small amount of time in the majors, or we necessarily haven't seen them up there yet. And I'm just standing by it. Last year was so great for players getting called up and rookies to be there. And this class next year for the Rookie of the Year could potentially be one of the most interesting. I mean, the Rookie of the Year debate is going to be heavy. And I just really wanted to take the time to go through this because I don't know if we truly understand. And I'm trying to keep this limited to one person per team and not go too deep here. I broke it with one team, but I think you'll understand why when I get there. But a lot of these guys, my goodness, our rookie class next year is going to be impressive. And I'm going to go American League. I'm going to go National League. I tried to limit this the best I could. I have about 13 names, just guys like this, going to be impressive. Starting it off, Toronto, Nate Pearson. Now, he had some great showings. He is the number one prospect in the Blue Jays system, number 6 overall MLB. During his first 4 starts before he went on the IL in August, he looked good. And it didn't seem to be a big issue. Returned the following month to strike out 5 batters. He hit 101 miles per hour in a 2-inning relief appearance. And he has what could potentially be some big-time upside as a reliever, which is something to point out because we just had a reliever win National League Rookie of the Year. And while it's not likely to happen, it still could happen. Now, Pearson is looking to have a better ceiling as a starter, has the ability to be a true front of the rotation ace, but he is someone for the Blue Jays that's going to be very interesting to watch next year. We talk about all the young hitting talent that the Blue Jays have. We can't skip this potential stud pitcher that they have in Pearson. That's for sure. Staying in the AL East, man, the Tampa Bay Rays might potentially have the 2 most exciting prospects in the sense of one that we're going to be watching right away to start the year in Randy Arozarena. I mean, the guy just went on one of the best performances in the playoffs ever in the postseason. Hit 377, 10 home runs in 20 games for Tampa Bay. He's going to be a guy that's going to probably be a favorite to win Rookie of the Year honors right away to start the season. But Tampa is also going to have potentially the guy that could be the most exciting call-up in the season with Wander Franco, the number 1 prospect in baseball. So I really wanted to stay with the fact that they have the guy that's going to be the favorite, I think. He's going to be the favorite probably when the odds are released before the start of the season. But they potentially could have another guy in contention if he gets brought up in Franco. So something to be worth noting. And that's a guy that's been up already. And I just, it's so funny that Rosarena can do all the things he did in the postseason, and still this next year is going to be considered his rookie season. That's just crazy. And one more guy in the American League, we got to talk about Bobby Dahlbeck for the Red Sox. Sixth in the minors with 59 home runs in 2018 to 2019. He has the ability to go deep and have strength, and he plays that third base, first base position for the Red Sox. He went deep 8 times and 80 at bats this summer. He's getting that opportunity to play a little bit, and he plays a good third base, and this could push Rafael Devers to another position, potentially playing a little first, potentially playing a little DH. They have some things they need to figure out ultimately when it comes to JD Martinez. But Dahlbeck is going to be a guy that's going to be up there. He's the number 3 prospect for the Red Sox, number 100 overall. Just another exciting guy to be talking about. Another guy that got the call up was probably not as impressive as we thought he was going to be. Former number 1 overall pick, Casey Mize, for the Detroit Tigers. Now, the number 2 prospect for the Tigers, number 5 overall. He struggled to find consistency in the major leagues to start. He was 0 for 3 with a 6.99 ERA. And that's over 7 starts. Still going to be considered a rookie coming into this next season. Still going to be a very high prospect. It's not shocking that a team that we didn't expect to be that good and overall wasn't that great in the Tigers, that their high prospect pitcher maybe struggled right away. But that's not enough to be giving up on him, because it looks like he has 3+ pitches still. It's going to be control and command. That's the problem we saw this last year. But don't be surprised if things start to get together, having that little bit of experience in this short and weird season, and then all of a sudden the Tigers have a top ace, top starting pitcher next year when things start to be figured out a little bit. Another guy in that American League Central that I'm interested in is Alex Kirioff. And he was a guy that we thought could get called up a lot throughout last season, and we ultimately didn't really see him until the postseason. He is one of the few rookies to ever make his major league debut in the postseason, and he was the first to pick up his first career hit in the playoffs, though unfortunately it doesn't officially count as a stat, as a hit, because it was in the postseason, but all the same, we get to talk about it. And he was a guy that was hitting well in summer camp. They were impressed with him at the alternate trading site. He's the number 2 prospect for the Twins. They're number 27 overall in the MLB. They think he can contribute full-time and be a great player in their lineup and stay there. They just didn't have a great place to put him last year. That's what kind of delayed him from getting to the majors. But I would think they're going to have a better plan with him moving forward into this next season and try to get him some opportunities to play. But if there's a name that I am most excited about when it comes to the American League, the number 1 prospect for the Seattle Mariners, number 9 overall, Jared Kelenic, could be the guy to push the Mariners to have back-to-back Rookie of the Years. And if you haven't been hearing the stories or seeing the videos about Kelenic at the alternate training site, a lot of people think he could have been called up in 2020, but they just didn't want to start his service time, and they didn't feel like they needed to rush anything. In spring training this upcoming season, he is going to have a lot of eyes on him. He is going to be someone very excited, a lefty bat that can just stroke it. It's such a pretty swing, and he hits the ball so well. And he could be claiming an outfield spot pretty early, and we would be very happy to see him. If there's one thing about the Mariners, they made that little push at the end of this 2020 season. They have a couple young guys to be excited about, and it just doesn't feel like the Mariners have had that in a while. And it's an exciting thing. This was a big prospect get. He used to be in the Mets organization, but with a trade and also a salary dump of Robinson Cano over to the Mets, they were able to get Kelenic back, and he has just been impressive. All the chatter is how much they love the kid, how great he's looked. So I imagine we're going to see him and be impressed with him in the upcoming season. Moving over to the National League, we got names that we've seen already. I mean, Ian Anderson for the Braves was great for them. It's going to be his official rookie year this next year. He's going to be in considerations for Rookie of the Year as well. And another NL East guy that's been strong is Sixto Sanchez. Okay, these are two top 100 prospects that are going to be up. Now, there was a little bit of concern with a fastball that had averaged a very, very high velocity. It's averaging about 97 miles per hour for Sixto Sanchez, and then it was starting to dip a little bit in the playoffs. They thought, uh-oh, this might be a problem. Could some type of surgery be looming? We haven't heard anything else about that. They might have thought it could have just been a tired, issue, little arm fatigue. But without that said, if we go into the season, all right, Ian Anderson and Sixto Sanchez are going to be two very big-time names when it comes to Rookie of the Years and rookie conversation altogether. Anderson being the number 3 prospect for the Braves, number 34 overall. Sixto being the number 1 prospect for the Marlins, number 19 overall. Exciting, exciting players. Another guy that got some opportunities last year, well, Dylan Carlson for the Cardinals, the number 1 prospect in their farm, number 14 overall. Batted .292 last season. 292 in his last stint in the minors. This was across 126 games in AA and AAA. 292, 26 home runs, 20 steals in those games. And he initially came up to the majors a little bit. He looked a little out of sorts. But then returned last year, and he looked better, batting .286 with 7 extra base hits and 11 RBIs over his final 11 regular season games. And Carlson was even batting more towards the top of the lineup for the Cardinals when it came to the postseason. So a guy that they're definitely excited about moving forward. And he could be a big name to watch when the Cardinals, they had their struggles on offense last year. They need run production. So he could be a guy that they look to, even if he's crazy young, to be something that pushes them ahead. And if there's another name that I like to talk about in the National League Central, the Pirates don't have much going for them. Sorry. It's just the honest truth. But they have a guy in Ke'Bryan Hayes, number 2 prospect for them, number 37 overall. And he came up towards the end of the 2020 season, and he looked strong. And he might be considered a front runner for that National League Rookie of the Year next year. He got 3 votes in the 2020, 1 second, 2 third, based on him batting .276 when he came up. And they also believe that Hayes could be a Gold Glover. So he just played in only 24 games, but his batting WAR was higher than any other rookie in 2020. I just want to see what he's going to be like on a full season. I like to look at these teams that are not going to be that great and try to find a shining spot, something that could be of interest, and Hayes for sure can be it. So if you're a Pirate fan and you don't know what to look forward to in the 2021 season, here it is. This kid has the potential to be special. He showed quite a bit in just a short stint. Like I said, only 24 games, but an impressive 24 games for him for sure. But I think our 2 biggest rookies that we're going to be wanting to talk about, wanting to see, is going to both come from the National League West. And I'm going to start with the higher ranked one as a pitcher in Mackenzie Gore, who is the number 1 prospect for the Padres, number 3 overall. And he didn't reach the majors, as many thought he would. He thought he was going to be here. Was the number 3 overall pick, 2017. And it just seemed like they had a couple young pitchers that were going to get there, but he didn't. 21-year-old left-hander. He looks like he could be a top of the rotation type of pitcher. It looks like he could be an ace. And he was on the postseason taxi squad even for the Padres. So he had potential to be there. But it seems like the Padres just want a little more consistency with secondary pitches before they just start throwing him out there. So they just don't want to rush anything with him. He's going to be an exciting addition to a already kind of booming, growing starting rotation for San Diego. We know about all the offense that's there, but with Clevenger, Lamet, and then maybe a Gore coming up, there's a lot of potential there. What could be a strong, strong pitching staff moving forward. But I'm looking at the Giants, and I want to see Joey Bart. I want to see Joey Bart, the number 2 overall pick in the 2018 draft. That's coming out of Georgia Tech. Joined the Giants out of necessity this summer after just 130 games of pro experience. Struggled at the plate during his debut, but they know he has power and he can be a great player for them behind the plate. What's going to be interesting with him is going to be the return of Buster Posey. What's that going to do for his appearances? Is Posey going to be playing more at first base? But then you got Brandon Belt you got to think about. There's a lot that could be going there. I'm sure the Giants are a team that are really hoping the DH comes back because they have a little bit of a logjam of guys, and they truly think they can contend and win this year. So there's a lot of different ways that this could go. And so now that's just 13 names right there. I'm just picking some of the teams. There's still other guys out there that we didn't even necessarily get the chance to talk about. I mean, other top 100 prospects like Josiah Gray for the Dodgers could be out there. We could see him at some point. We had Spencer Howard for the Phillies, a right-handed pitcher. Potentially we could see him. There's just so many other guys out there. Forrest Whitley for the Astros could be interesting. AJ Puck, who's for the A's been great last year. He gave him some time at the catcher or as a left-handed pitcher, not a catcher. And then Brandon Marsh for the Angels. I mean, there's a ton of names. Ton of names. This rookie class next year could be just as good, if not better, than what we saw in 2020. So I'm excited to get to that. And I really want to stay on the topic of 2021 season. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, let's take a look at who could be our potential award winners in the 2021 season coming up here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
So in all honesty, some of my favorite articles to read are the ones that are just a little bit ridiculous and it's not time to truly think about them. And you might be thinking, well, what the heck are you talking about? And I get caught up in these, whether it be football, whether it be basketball, whether it be baseball, whatever. It's all the potential, this move that could happen next season. These are the free agents next year. These are the trades that we could see. These are the award winners going into the future. Our top 25 and under player, like all that stuff that doesn't necessarily matter in the moment, but it's stuff that we could be looking at. And MLB.com is victim of this. ESPN is victim of this. We see this all the time. And so I wanted to kind of jump on the bandwagon, and I want to talk about our 2021, way too soon, way too early, MLB award winners. Yeah, those MLB award winners. And like I said, I know I might be jumping into this a little bit too soon, but with the award season just coming to an end, I really got to thinking about a lot of these teams and what we could potentially be seeing. And so I wanted to dive on past just our rookie conversation and look at, well, if we're going to talk about all these rookies, maybe we should talk about who could be our potential rookie of the year. So I'm going to start off with the National League. And I have to say, we have a lot of names that could be potential here and names that we also talked about. So Ryan Haynes could be the favorite. We brought him up just because of how great he really looked in that short stint for the Pirates. And his numbers could end up looking even better considering the sense that he will be hitting for a team that will not be that great, so maybe he's not even going to see the top end pitching all the time. So that's something to potentially be looking at for sure. But there's other guys that we might see more pitching come into the conversation for the National League. Sixto Sanchez is going to be electrifying if healthy. when you throw close to 100 miles per hour and have a devastating changeup, and you're coming out as a starter, and he's exciting. He's just flat out exciting. He would be the guy that I would be considering to look at for a lot of the season. But also, Ian Anderson is going to be considered a big time favorite in all of this as well. I just think there's a lot of excitement when it comes to the National League rookie race. And we talked a lot about these rookies already, so I'm not going to dive too deep into these guys for sure. And I stand by the point that I made before in the sense of Joey Bart is someone that will be interesting, but it all is going to come down to where his play comes from. Is it going to be consistent? We're going to see him behind the plate. Where are we going to get him out there? It's going to be every day at bats for him that we need. And Buster Posey returning is someone that throws a little bit of an issue in there, what we're going to see for Bart's development. And there's other guys, like we talked about. I mean, Dylan Carlson for the Cardinals is going to be interesting. There's another Padres starter in Luis Patino and Mackenzie Gore. They are going to be interesting to see as well. There's just going to be so many starting pitchers, potentially as rookies, for the National League to talk about this. And another, this very, very dark horse name is Dalton Varsho for the Diamondbacks. And he struggled a little bit this last year in the majors. Needs to settle kind of into one spot that he's going to play. But he's someone that could be interesting as a bat for a Diamondbacks team this year that also is similar to Hayes. Might not be the greatest team in the world and might not see the most top-end pitching. It might help his numbers a little bit this year. I think Hayes is going to be the favorite going into the season, but could see it going a lot of different directions. For the American League Rookie of the Year, Arozarena has got to be the favorite going in. He has to be the favorite. I'm going to be shocked on betting numbers for other people. It's just when you do what he did at the highest level, at the highest stage, you got to be getting some attention. But Wander Franco is also going to be in this conversation. Very much going to be in this conversation. Now, Franco and Jared Kelenic have not played in the majors at all. And because of service times considerations, we don't know when we're going to be getting them. We don't know if they're going to be considered for Rookie of the Year this year or next year, but they both should, based off the talent and what we know about them, probably be in for this year. So I have them written down here as potential winners. I have them written down, but they are big-time asterisks next to their names just because we don't know when they'll be called up. So I'm really looking at Arozarena being a clear favorite in the American League. And while there's a lot of other names, I'm interested in Joe Adell, Nate Pearson, and Casey Mize as other guys to get in the conversation as the season goes on. I really do think Mize is going to bounce back and have a good year in 2021. Joe Adell, he kind of falls to the back in that Angels team. Has the potential to be great, but we talk about Trout, we talk about Rendon, we talk about Pujols, we talk about Ohtani. It's just he doesn't shine through as much. And we even took the time to talk about Pearson for the Blue Jays, a great, solid, strong pitcher for them. He's going to be someone interested to see. And we don't see as many relievers win this like we did this year with Devin Williams. There's some other guys that could potentially be on the reliever market to say as well. The American League is going to be interesting in that sense. Dane Dunning for the White Sox is someone to look at. There's also a White Sox teammate in Nick Madrigal, who, if he has his rookie status coming in, he played 29 games, batted .340 for the White Sox. He's another name to throw in there. Ultimately, I think it's Arozarena right now. I feel like he is going to be the favorite. If Franco gets called up, that could very much change it. If Kelenic gets called up, that could very much change it. But I would go with Arozarena right now at this moment. Jumping back to the National League. The Cy Young. This was fun, the 60 games, in the sense of how deep the Cy Young talk went. And when I tried to limit the names that I could write down, it got hard in the National League. All right, it got difficult. and I did not have a fun time trying to limit this because I had to put DeGrom down right away. DeGrom has been in this consideration for this award for the last how many years? I mean, he was even in it, the top 3 for this year, so he's going to be there. I put down Max Scherzer because I know if he's healthy, he is going to be up towards the top of strikeouts. His ERA should be good. He's going to help a Nationals team out. And then I had to put down Walker Buehler just from what I saw from him in the postseason, what I know he can be. He's been fine the last couple of years. You can see the talent, but he really caught my eye in this postseason. I really was a little more impressed with him in some of his starts. And so I would consider him in this conversation as well. But I couldn't stop the names there. I mean, Yu Darvish was great for the Cubs this year. He was a top 3 finalist for the National League Cy Young. If he looks any bit like he did this year, next year he'll be in that. Max Fried was awesome for the Braves in the past. I like having him. Is Aaron Nola going to have a little bit more of a better season? Jack Flaherty is a name that's up there. I mean, he has been a stud for the Cardinals in the past. And then how about a guy that was really good a lot of this season in Corbin Burns? If Corbin Burns doesn't get hurt in his last start, are we potentially talking about him sneaking in and stealing a Cy Young? And that's potential. It could happen there. And if he has everything figured out over that stretch that he had this last season, if he carries that into the next year, are we looking at him a little bit differently? So the list of names there is long. And stay with the Brewers, Brandon Woodruff could be talked about. Does Mike Soroka come back for Atlanta and look better? Does Danielson Lamet or Mike Clevenger for the Padres? The National League is hard. It's very, very difficult. And I don't know if I can pick a guy. And so just the safe bet is just to say DeGrom, just because I know of his history and how he makes just everything look easy and flawless. So I would put my way too early stamp on DeGrom, but like I said, the list of names, it's long and it's hard and it's difficult to pick from. Now, the American League Cy Young, I had a little bit more ease because I look at some of these names and I know they're going to be great. Shane Bieber, I expect to be really good again next year. That's period. I mean, this guy was a Triple Crown pitcher winner in the American League. I just expect that to be great again next year. Garrett Cole, I think his dominance in this year just goes a little underappreciated, but he was really good for the Yankees all year. And then I have down Lucas Giolito, who I think is in the making of being a strong starter for the White Sox and moving towards that top of the rotation type of pitcher. I also have written here starred down Trevor Bauer. And I don't think I have a team that I'm picking for sure where he goes. He could go National League, he could go Cy Young. But just because my list was much shorter in the American League, I almost had a star written there just to bring him up. It was easier to talk about him over there. But I think those 3 are going to be the favorites, and they are kind of my favorite picks. There's other guys we could talk about. Zach Plesac for the Indians is another one that interests me a little bit. Just because when he was healthy and out on the field, because, he didn't have any issues stopping from him off the field sometimes to keep him there, I found him interesting. I know that I've seen some people talking about Framber Valdez for the Astros. He's coming off a pretty strong season. It could potentially be there, but it feels like in the American League, even with some great pitchers, that Cole Bieber and Giolito are the guys that stand out. And maybe even Lance Lynn is a guy to talk about if he can put together another strong year. We could bring him up, but I don't think you're way too off going with either Cole or Bieber. Leaning a little more Cole. And it's more of a gut call. I think Bieber takes a little bit of a step back, but you could go either way with both of those. Next, we got to talk about the MVP, and this was just like the National League Cy Young. Once I started writing a couple names down, a lot of names started coming. And the National League, Juan Soto feels like he would be my favorite. I have to say right off the front, I would be picking Juan Soto to win next year. What he was doing for the Nationals last year was incredible, and I only picture him getting better as things have been going on. He is just so crazy talented. Power, speed, average. I mean, he's got it all. And I think he's going to take another big step forward. The one thing that could help him or hurt him, I should say, is there's another MVP consideration on his own team in Trey Turner. And that ultimately was kind of the problem that I had with some of these guys. Mookie Betts will be in there, but I look at his team and I know he's loaded with talent. Fernando Tatis is in there, but I look at your team and you got Manny Machado, you got Hosmer, you got Will Myers turning things around. You have a lot of other talent there, which makes it hard. Ronald Acuna Jr., you got Freddie Freeman there as well, the other guy who just won an MVP. And the thing that's going to get tough in looking at this is, do you expect some guys to have bounce back seasons? And I might be off and not putting Yelich and Bellinger up there to be major contenders, but I want to see them bounce back to getting more to their normal selves before I start talking about MVP awards. Yelich, last year was just a surprise. Same with Bellinger. I mean, so guys that like to use the field and be very strong at the plate, I didn't expect that major drop off. And it's funny because Yelich almost kind of predicted his down season. He talked about how there's going to be some big time names that really struggle this year because they don't get that opportunity to turn things around over a long season. And he was right. And so I'm looking for these guys to mainly rebound first before I start talking MVP. And I just think it's a fair point to be made. So my MVP National League, if I was looking ahead right now, I would have to say Juan Soto. I'm leaning there, even with that dark horse of Trey Turner there. And if you want another dark horse, a very, very another dark horse, Corey Seager was pretty good for the Dodgers last year. We'll see if he gets a little bit more love. And the American League, it's safe to always put Mike Trout in there, right? That's the safe thing to do. Jose Ramirez is another name that I'm interested in, but also with Francisco Lindor there, I'm also interested in him. I think if he doesn't start the season on the Indians, wherever he starts, I think he's going to have a monster season going into free agency. He's wanting to get that major contract. It seems pretty clear. He's been talked to about if the Indians can re-sign him, and he said, "Oh yeah, the Indians have plenty of money." I think he wants to get paid, so I feel like this is going to be a great season for him. Aaron Judge is someone that I want to see as well. If he can just stay healthy. He was on such a tear to start the 2020 season that it looked like he was going to be the best bat in baseball. You didn't really seem like you could slow him down. His power numbers were great. I just want to see him healthy for a stretch. I want for a full season, fully healthy, because he looks to be on his game pretty dominant. Let's get him out there on the field looking that way for 162 games. And there's other names to be talking about. I'm interested in Anthony Rendon in the MVP conversation. I'm interested in Rafael Devers if he continues to be hitting the ball as well. Also Xander Bogaerts for the Red Sox. Now, is your team going to be good enough to contend where you get some MVP thoughts? Those are two really good offensive players. But if your pitching is so bad next year and your team's not winning games, it's going to hurt overall what your opinion is about you when it comes to anything to deal with an MVP. I can't go 100% against Trout. It's hard to pick against him, and I know. This last year wasn't his best year, but he still was a top 5 MVP consideration. But I think Trout is just too easy of a pick. He's just too easy. So I'm looking at Francisco Lindor and that contract that's coming up, and I truly am thinking he is going to be a guy that has a massive, massive season. Whether it be in Cleveland, whether it be somewhere else, I think we're going to see an MVP type year for Francisco Lindor. That's just where I stand on that. So it's fun to dive into this. I like to look ahead. This means absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of baseball. But at the same time, if we don't predict something, if we don't have something to look forward to, hey, where's all the excitement come sometimes? So it was fun to talk about. So I want to thank you once again for downloading and listening to the GSMC Baseball Podcast and the GSMC Podcast Network. It means a great deal. Your support is greatly appreciated. If you have the chance, would love for you to leave a positive comment, review, anything whatsoever. It really helps out the show, stuff that you want to hear about, talk about. Maybe you have some predictions for who's going to be some award winners next year, rookies that you are potentially excited about, or some rumors, some players that you want us to be diving into. Love all that information. Look forward to hearing from you guys. I want to thank you once again. Collin Manley going to be signing off here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.